I've got it now. Members, we're going to have changed with tradition this morning. So, ladies and gentlemen, can I please remind you to ensure mobile phones and other devices are on silent, that banners, etc. are not permitted, and members of the public are not allowed to address the meeting, to use the microphones which are available when addressing the meeting, and that you may be filmed or recorded during this meeting. Thank you. Please be upstanding for the chairman through a different door this morning. Oh, I prepared you for something different.
Can you hear me? How significant I think it is that you as a council do invite chaplains like myself to come and to connect your works of service that you do in your communities and here to God, because isn't that exactly what our late Queen has left as her legacy? I was so struck by her royal biographer, Robert Lacey, describing that while she was still able, every night she would take to her knees the Queen and humble herself before the king that she served. And so, in some way, let's kind of do that together this morning. Now, I know you've got a busy agenda, so I'll keep this to just under an hour. Lord Jesus, there was no one greater than you, yet you took to your knees and washed your disciples' feet. You are the type of king who humbled yourself so you could get close to us and be personal. Thank you that our late Queen knew you to be close and personal. Thank you for her life of service, for the love that she showed. And so we pray we can have that same personal connection with you, the same joy when we serve others, the same peace to know we are not alone, and the same hope the Queen had to know that we can live way beyond our death when we believe and follow you, Jesus. Lord, let this wonderful hope ease the grief in the hearts of the late Queen's family and friends. And we pray for ourselves too, for those who are perhaps feeling afresh the pain of their own losses. Let us be reassured of your love, which never dies. And in particular, we remember the family of our colleague, Councillor Eddie Curley, who passed away recently. Give peace to them during this difficult time, and we thank you for his life and his acts of service. And finally, be with us today in our thinking and our speaking and in our decisions, we pray. Amen. Amen. Let's observe a minute's silence now in honour of our beloved and departed Queen, and perhaps anyone you would like to remember during this silence.
Thank you, members, for that. Thank you very much. And thank you, Francis, for those few words of reflection. Thank you very much, Steve. Maybe we'll sit down now. Thank you, members. The first item on the agenda is to ask for the approval of the minutes of the last meeting. All those in favour? Where do I sign it? Yeah. Okay. Are there any apologies for absence, please? Councillor Barnfather.
Thank you, Chairman. I have apologies from Councillor Girling, who is busy getting blisters at the moment on a charity cycle ride in Belgium. And I have also been asked to give apologies for Councillor Steve Garner for other reasons.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have apologies for Councillor Mike Pringle, who is ill, and Councillor John Clark will be a bit late this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. Councillor Deakin.
Thank you, Chair. I've got apologies for Councillor Hollis on other reasons. I've got apologies for Helen Ann Smith, who is ill. I've also got apologies for Elizabeth Williamson and Steve Carr, who are both on holiday at present. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Deakin. It's gone now.
Yep, it's on. So yes, thank you, Chairman. So I have a pecuniary interest in agenda item 4.
Which we swiftly move on to now. So, confirmation of appointment of position of Chief Executive, and I would like to call upon Councillor Ben Bradley, who will move the recommendation in the report.
Just stand up and give it.
There you go. Thank you, Chairman. Pleasure to introduce the report, which details the decision that's been made by the Senior Staffing Committee to appoint Adrian Smith as our new Chief Executive. The committee was made up of a cross-party group of senior councillors, and in line with our constitution, was able to shortlist, interview and then make an appointment to the role. Adrian has been fulfilling this role on an acting basis since Anthony May left the council around 3 years ago, and members will know that that appointment is now formally subject to ratification by the council 3 weeks ago. Seems like years ago. I miss him. Whilst members may remember, we paid tribute to Anthony's long and excellent service at the council before the summer, and we wished him well in his new role. Typically, we don't have the same kind of debate around new appointments, tends to be short and sweet. So I'll simply say that having worked with Adrian for 5.5 years now in various capacities, I've always been impressed by his work, by his knowledge of our organisation, his ability to look beyond our boundaries at the big picture. I'm looking forward to working with him on the task of driving the kind of change and reform we'll need if we're to make our council services sustainable for local residents. So on behalf of the administration, I want to offer my congratulations to him on his appointment and to wish him the best of luck. I trust we'll be able to support his appointment today and tick this final box to allow him to fully get on with the job, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to second the motion for the confirmation and the appointment to the position of Chief Executive for Adrian. I'd just like to say that I think he's an excellent candidate. I look forward to working with him. He will do us all proud, it's important that we have a forward-thinking Chief Executive, as Anthony was, to be able to carry the good work that's been going on in this council.
Thank you. Councillor Fole.
Okay. Oh, there you go. Thank you. So okay, thank you. So just many congratulations to Adrian. We're very happy to support this report. It was a privilege to be part of the committee that interviewed him and recruited him. He was a very strong candidate. It was very clear. His answers were exceptional, and we really all felt, I think, that this county would be in very safe hands for the future. And there was stiff competition on the day. I think that's something else we need to say. This was a proper, robust kind of open recruitment process. So we're looking forward to our good working relationship with Adrian, both me personally and with the group. And all the very best. And as I say, I'm sure the council will be in safe hands under Adrian's chief executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No one else seems to have indicated to want to speak, so we move straight to the vote. And all those in favour, please show. I think that looks like a unanimous vote. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll let you finish.
Congratulations, Adrian. Yes. It is now official. So, yes, you can looking after me for the rest of the day. Chairman's business. It is with great sadness that we meet here together today, following the news of Queen Elizabeth II passing away on the 8th of September. Her steadfastness and dedication to public service is an inspiration to us all. She visited our county on many memorable occasions, and I am sure that we will shortly hear some wonderful stories from those of you who had the privilege of meeting her. As you might expect, this council will look at how we in Nottinghamshire can commemorate the life and service of Queen Elizabeth II, and a cross-party working group will be set up to undertake this very important task. I will now invite members who wish to say a few words about the Queen. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we're probably blowing protocol out the water a little bit by continuing to have this discussion beyond the period of national mourning, but I felt it was important today to, the first time we've met since Her Majesty's death, to give members the opportunity to speak and to pay tribute to her. I've been privileged enough in recent weeks to be able to do that many times, and it's been an honour, I have to say, since Her Majesty's death, to play my part on behalf of the Council and as a Member of Parliament in those tributes to the Queen, in celebrating her life and offering condolences to her family, as well, of course, as to welcome and to support our new King. Her death represents the end of an era and the start of a new one, a transition that's never been seen in most of our lifetimes. And so it's a historic change for our country. Whatever people's views of the monarchy as an institution, I happen to believe that our constitutional monarchy is the bedrock that underpins our democracy. I think it's the envy of the world in many ways. It's given us stability and security throughout our recent history. But whatever people's views of the institution, Her Majesty the Queen was almost universally respected and loved, both here and around the world, for her dedication, her knowledge, her experience. And the way that she devoted her entire life, literally right up to her final days, to her duty and to service of her country is an incredible story, and one that I doubt we will see repeated. She transformed the monarchy as an institution. In many ways, she personally has ensured that it supports and promotes our democracy in the way that I described. She was a source of inspiration and of hope at key times in our history through her interventions. Many people have spoken in recent weeks about address to the nation during COVID, where she told us that we would meet again, and how that brought hope to millions of people. That's just one of many such examples. And she's been a constant presence in our lives, to the point where many of us felt that we knew her, even though we never met her. I've been privileged to speak to colleagues and to take part in the debate in the Commons last week and hear from colleagues who have known her and have been in her presence many times. And those are the best stories to me, Mr. Chairman, those that are most reflective of her character, when people have shared those private moments, her charm, her humour, when she was out of the public eye, things that we've seen more recently exemplified in her appearances with James Bond at the Olympics or with Paddington Bear. we've seen that for ourselves. But those personal stories, I think, paid best tribute and most exemplified her character. And we've heard a lot of that in recent weeks. I've given a few speeches on this in recent weeks as well, Mr. Chairman, so I don't intend to repeat it all today. I know that some members have their own stories, have met her, have been honoured by her, and they want to speak and pay tribute. So I won't hog the time, but suffice it to say that we'll never see the likes of Her late Majesty again in her longevity, a sense of duty, the universal respect and love that she had from the nation. It feels in many ways like losing a member of your extended family, and I know that it's reminded many people and brought back memories of grandparents and other lost loved ones for many people in our communities. That feeling and that connection hasn't appeared by accident. That's because of the person and the servant that Queen Elizabeth was and the way she cared for her country and for its people. Equally, and in the finest of British tradition, the succession and the changing of the guard has taken place seamlessly, with our new king taking on a huge burden in recent days to step into those shoes to fulfil his role despite the huge personal grief that he and his family must be feeling. I have nothing but pride and respect for the way that he's done that in this incredibly difficult period. And nothing but pride and respect, too, for the incredible display of love and of pageantry that we saw from our armed forces and others during the funeral this week. I feel honoured to have been present for the King's first address to Parliament last Monday. And I have no hesitation at all, Mr. Chairman, in ending by saying that I hope Her late Majesty is happy, is reunited with Philip somewhere, and God save the King.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Fowle.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I'm rising to recognise and give thanks to Queen Elizabeth for her exceptional long life of public service and accomplished with real care and dignity. Our duty of service, as Ben's just said, was absolutely unparalleled. It was astonishing. And I haven't got a story because I never met her, but it became very clear to me that she was very clearly much appreciated by very many. I think 28 million people watched the funeral on TV alone, and there were clearly some very moving parts to that funeral. I think you could see very much the emotion and what people felt about the Queen. It really speaks for itself, I thought. I'd just also like the opportunity, because I don't see it elsewhere, to thank all those involved in organising the proclamation and other events, the one here at County Hall on the 11th of September and across Nottinghamshire. Watching families come to those historic occasions with their children and grandchildren was just great to see. That was one of the warmest and best parts of it to me, to see people, how they were moved and how they were listening and how they were starting to understand the importance of this historic event. And so I'm very sure that these young people will remember how they fought for a very long time. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Fowle. Councillor Zrodny.
Okay. We're on. We're going to have to all questions, I think. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of the Independent Alliance, I'm proud and very privileged to say a few words on the sad death of Her Majesty. And I'd first like to thank yourself and the leader for accepting the point about a cross-party group. I think that's a really constructive way that we might find ways of commemorating and remembering in the future. So I'd really like to thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, grief is the price we pay for love. Those were the words of our late Queen. Those were the words she gave to the families of the 250 British victims of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And I think since her passing, the outpouring of grief has been nothing like we've ever seen. And it just shows how devotedly she was loved, as our nation was entirely dressed in black. Here in Nottinghamshire, we've seen hundreds of events, church services, and the proud proclamation of King Charles III here at County Hall, then at borough and districts, followed by our parishes and town councils. And though we all have really special memories of Her Majesty, I wanted to focus for a moment on her passing and the state funeral. At the Queen's funeral, Mr. Chairman, Luke Simpson from Selston, a former Ashfield school pupil, was one of the proud 1st Battalion Grenadier Guards carrying the Queen's coffin from Westminster Hall to the gun carriage before taking it onto its final plot at Westminster Abbey. And what an amazing job he did, and we're also very proud of him. In fact, those 8 lads, they were faultless. They had a difficult duty and they carried it out impeccably. Lead-lined coffin made of English oak, and never a step out of place, never a wobble, and the crown jewels on top. And the eyes of half the world were on them. Well done, Luke. You did Ashfield and you did your country proud. And in fact, Mr. Chairman, the whole funeral was a truly immaculate display of drill, of timing, of gentle care and of turnout in honour of the late Queen. And what other country could have instilled such a sense of national pride? Joel Meakin from Sutton in Ashfield was part of the team who put together the public address system that millions of people listened to on our parks and streets of London, including Royal Windsor and Westminster, and he even assisted with the coverage on Radio Mansfield. Dozens of our local officers from the force were called up to support operations for the funeral lying in state and committal in London and Windsor, and hundreds of residents from Nottinghamshire travelled to London for the funeral. They just wanted to be there. And I know members of the County Council staff joined a queue for 15 hours to spend just a few minutes paying their respects to the Queen as she lay in state in Westminster. Now, Mr. Chairman, as the world wakes up to a new king, we can reflect on 70 years of public service, 70 glorious years. In June, there was the outpouring of joy for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, and I was proud to join the chairman of Ashfield District Council, David Walters, the head teacher, Grant Worthington, and 300 of their pupils at a huge outdoor disco at Mapplewells Primary School in Sutton to celebrate the Queen's milestone, and that'll be part of those children's memory of our late Queen, though quite a lot of the little ones are truly convinced that she only ate marmalade sandwiches. My first memory, Mr. Chairman, was the Queen's Christmas message, 3 o'clock on Christmas Day. It was for my household strictly to be observed. I think that's because my grandmother bore an uncanny resemblance with the white hair and the twin set and pearls. But we never missed, Mr. Chairman. Some people may recall that I am quite a geek. And when I was very little, I took up writing to every celebrity or big name that I could, and I made, by the age of 8, quite a few pen pals, David Attenborough, Judi Dench, and many of the Carry-On stars, as you might know. But when I was 8, I chose to write to the Queen and invited to come and watch our school nativity play. Unfortunately, I'm reliably informed she was very busy. But my most treasured letter came from Buckingham Palace, marked with the royal emblem, Queen Elizabeth II, and I got a lovely typed letter back from Susan Hussey, Baroness Hussey of North Bradley, who is now known as the godmother of Prince Williams, and she politely explained that the Queen couldn't attend but wished the school very well. A few times later, Chairman, as I got older, I did have the fortunate pleasure of meeting the Queen a couple of times at the Queen's Garden Party and then an event for Armed Forces boxers. But then when I was 17, she came to Queen Elizabeth School in Mansfield, where I was there. It's the first time I met Councillor Smith, who was a little younger than I, and it was the first time we saw the Queen and we had commemorative coins from Mansfield. It was really a special time, and it was one of the things that's etched in local people's memory, because that's when we got to actually have a moment with her as we queued up. I did have a moment with her at the garden party because I stood in the wrong queue and I was stood next to the Dalai Lama and Councillor Clark, I think, and I was in the wrong queue, so she pushed past me, moved me out of the line. Mr. Chairman, I know we've all got stories about the Queen, how she touched our lives. My 98-year grandfather from Annesley is quite disappointed he won't get a telegram from the Queen. He still hopes it'll be from the King, but he still hopes he'll get one. And I could talk forever about her sacrifice, but as I started my comments with a quote from the Queen, I want to end with a quote as well. I think one that everyone in the chamber will remember. It was from November 92 when the Queen said, "No institution, no city, no monarchy, whatever, should expect to be free from scrutiny of those who don't give it their loyalty and support, not to mention those who don't." So on behalf of the Independent Alliance, Mr. Chairman, God rest the Queen and long live the King. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sidrodny, on your reflections. That's very, very, very good. Councillor Neil Clark.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman, and I rise, obviously, as everybody has done already, to pay tribute to Her late Majesty the Queen and to support the leader's comments in terms of, you know, how many superlatives can you bring together. There are just limitless superlative words that describe the Queen over her entire and thankfully long life. I met the Queen at a garden party, and one of the things that I remember, if you recall, Camilla, the now Queen Consort, said and reflected about her smile, and seeing her smile to people and constantly smiling at lots of different people that she was meeting was an amazing experience to see how her and the rest of her family were all eager to interact and talk to as many people as possible. I wasn't very honoured to receive the MBE, not from the Queen, but from her son, the then Prince of Wales, now King Charles III. And what has impressed me from the royal family is I appreciate they get briefed a lot by their equerries, etc., but they're able to portray that they are knowledgeable about a lot of things, and they must be constantly having to remember so many things about so many people. And so I was really privileged and honoured to receive that MBE from the now King. Mention has been made of the funeral. Nobody can do ceremonial better than this country. It was an amazing experience, and to see the hundreds of thousands of people lining the routes, I say routes because there were lots of routes, in order to give the Queen an amazing send-off, and speaking to some people who don't even support the monarchy, they were saying how great it was and what a fantastic, amazing lady she was anyway, and what she's done for this country. I have to say, talked about 100th birthdays. My mother reached her 100th birthday 4 or 5 months ago and received a card from the Queen, and that was amazing. My mother was really chuffed to receive that Queen. Sadly, she left us a couple of months ago, but to receive that card for the 100th was truly amazing. So I think one of the biggest memories of the Queen is how she has fulfilled the pledge she made when she was 21 years old, 75 years ago, that she would devote the whole of her life to the service of the people. And boy, has she fulfilled that pledge, not earning just the love and respect of everybody in this country, but worldwide, around the whole world, all the messages that have come in. It's amazing how many people did actually respect her and look up to her. So I think, what can I say other than what an amazing lady? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Barney.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's been quite 2 weeks, hasn't it? And just very quickly, I wanted to relay a moment that really struck a deep emotional chord with me. 2 days after Boris Johnson had lost his job as Prime Minister, he rose to his feet in the House of Commons and delivered what many have commented on as possibly the best speech of his life, in recognition of his close relationship with Her Majesty over many years. But the moment that really struck a chord with me is what followed. Harriet Harman rose to her feet following Boris Johnson. Leader, I'm sure you were there, and you could recall more personally than I was watching on television. And she was choked, and she stopped, and she looked at Boris Johnson, obviously not the greatest of pals politically over the years. She looked him in the eyes, and she said, "Boris, that was incredible." And there was a slight gasp in the chamber of the recognition. And she said, "No, seriously, Boris, that was incredible." And then she went on to deliver her own amazing speech, recalling a story of how, when she was fired from the cabinet, the only person in town who gave her the time of day and wanted to still know her was Her Majesty. And she received that day a personal invitation from the Queen inviting her for tea in Buckingham Palace. As our chaplain commented and opened, our Queen modelled the greatest example of servant leadership that any of us could ever envisage or hope to follow. And for me personally, the challenge of her life and her legacy is that continuation. And for us here as elected representatives in Nottinghamshire, the challenge is, can we model that unity, that accord here in Nottinghamshire and deliver as she has done so amicably for 7 decades in our short time here as servants in Nottinghamshire. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barney. Any other? Councillor Quigley.
Sure you can hear me anyway. I don't need a microphone. It would be remiss of me not to get up and say a few words because unlike Councillor Clark, I was fortunate enough to be invested in my MBE by the Queen herself. And on that particular day, Johnson Bahari received his VC, so it was quite a memorable occasion. But what the thing that strikes me is the Queen is the same age as my mother, 96. And I think to most people in this country, she strikes as being a motherly figure, and she's very empathetic with people. When I received my MBE, I was charmed by her sense of humour. I won't tell you what she said to me because that's privileged information, but she had quite a little chuckle when I was presented with my MBE. And I was fortunate enough to go to the garden party on 3 occasions. And the first occasion was when the family used to freely walk around the gardens without fear of any issues. And latterly, of course, they started being confined to a marquee at the bottom of the garden because of security issues. I think Mr. Fagin was probably the one that instigated that. But the event of the funeral was a striking difference between the coronation. I think I was 6 years old at the time of the coronation, and watched it on a 9-inch pie television, black and white, along with several of our neighbours. But then to see her funeral on a huge television screen with friends with us, it was a tremendous occasion, deeply saddening, because I can remember the Queen from when she was crowned in the 50s, right up until her funeral, and fortunate enough to be in her company on at least 4 occasions, and it will always be a resounding memory for me, and I think she shows us all what service to the community and to the country and to the Commonwealth has been over 70 years.
Thank you, Councillor Quigley. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow on from that, Councillor Quigley, I know most people alive today, as Councillor Quigley just said, will refer to Her late Majesty the Queen as a grandmother figure from my generation, and that rings true to me too. My affection to Queen Elizabeth the Great was sparked by my late grandmother Margaret. Now she was only 7 years younger than Her late Majesty and was 20 when she was crowned. From that crowning and golden coach moment when my grandmother huddled around a family TV to watch the coronation, my nan began collecting magazines and newspaper cutouts of historic royal moments. These included the birth of all her 4 children, their weddings, the birth of their children, royal tours, jubilee events, and Trooping of the Colour. Now, I'm unashamed to say that my nan's affection for the monarchy rubbed off on me. Each year, while Trooping of the Colour was being aired, we'd view it together, or if that wasn't possible, we'd ring each other to discuss the pageantry, the Queen's sense of duty, the royal family's procession down the Mall, the balcony waves, and the flypast as it happened live. And we would never miss the Queen's speech on Christmas Day. It's fair to say, Mr. Chairman, that by this point, my nan's admiration and love and respect for the Queen and royal family had rubbed off on my young self. Now, as a member of this council with a special interest in education, I fear that I shouldn't declare the following. But to mark this historic occasion of Her late Majesty's death, I will admit it, that whilst my nan was housebound in 2012, the Queen and the newly married Duke and Duchess of Cambridge visited Nottingham. I felt the urge to mark this occasion by lining Market Square, and vigorously waving the Union flag with my grandpa as they passed by. Now, as the Queen's Rolls-Royce drove up King Street, Mr. Chairman, just at the moment she pointed where my grandpa and I were stood, she was telling the now new Princess of Wales, to wave, and they did at us where we were stood. My grandpa's phone began to ring at that point, and I knew exactly what was coming. It was my mother on the phone to my grandfather, and the head teacher of Gedling School was on the other end of that phone, telling him that I've gone missing from my maths GCSE exam. Now, I'm pleased to report, Mr. Chairman, that not only did the Queen and future King wave at my grandfather and I also passed the maths GCSE exam, both of which made my nan very proud. As my nan aged, Mr. Chairman, she began gifting me her royal collection of magazines and newspaper cuttings. This is a collection that I've added to over the years and which now sadly includes the passing of Her late Majesty. The collection of royal newspaper cuttings in my office encapsulates historic moments in our lifetime, all that were led by the Queen. A life of duty, dedication to our United Kingdom and realms, of which, Mr. Chairman, my nan, the good folk of Newark East, and I will be eternally grateful. It was an honour of mine to join with Councillor Adams and friends to line the mall last week for one of Her Majesty's final journeys between Buckingham Palace and Westminster Hall, and to pay my respects and those of my nan to her 70 years of service as her coffin and the procession marched by. Thank you for your service, ma'am, and God save the King.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Lawton.
Yes, thank you very much. I just thought it timely, really, to rise on behalf of the military personnel in the council. There's Errol and Keith, who's in Belgium. Really, I think it's important for you all to realise the importance of the constitutional monarchy to the operation of the armed forces. In fact, I was in the Duke of Wellington's battalion, and it was the only battalion in the British Army which had a non-royal as the Colonel-in-Chief. It was Duke of Wellington who was our colonel. But they regularly visit, and the Queen did as well, regularly visit all our armed force units, and you could see by the dedication on the day of her funeral and the way that the military operated that they have a true love. Had a true love for the Queen. When we were passing out at Sandhurst, the Royals were always present, and they were always a part of the military across this country. And it's that strength and that constitutional monarchy which allows our military to operate in the way it does and gives us the security we are as a country, and the Queen understood that and was a part of maintaining the strength of that relationship, which is so important to all our security as a country. So I would like to just say thank you to her. I think this is a pertinent time. I think it's right that we should be doing this, even though we are out of the 10-day period. So it is important that we do say thank you. And we all are saddened by her loss, but 96 years and an exemplary service. She has done us all proud. God save the King.
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. I never met the Queen. I served in the military for 12 years. And the one thing that you do when you're in the military is you do your oath of allegiance. And what you are pretty much saying in that oath of allegiance is you will give your time and service, and where required, you will give your life to the country and the monarch. The Queen was stability during a very difficult time, especially our service. We had nearly 10 years in Iraq and Afghanistan where people were coming back on pretty much the same plane that she came into London. They were dying, and we had that stability from the royal family. A very quick story, even though I never met the Queen. When I got injured, I was in Birmingham Hospital, and one of the nurses came over to me and said, there's somebody who would like to see you, but if I tell you who it is, you're not allowed to tell anybody. I was 19 on a lot of morphine, and it was the future king. I'd asked to personally see him, and I was lucky enough to see him and go to a private side room and see him. And it was unbelievable that I'm telling him all this nasty things that was going on in Afghanistan, and then he changed the subject and started talking about Coronation Street, not knowing to me at the time Prince Harry would have been out there the exact same time as me. And it just goes to show that even during their difficulty having their son, their grandson in Afghanistan fighting for the country, that they were still willing to do their duty. And that's the one thing the Queen always did, her duty to the end. And for that, I thank her personally, and God save the King.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. No other members have indicated?
Yes,
oh, sorry. Councillor Wilmot. Sorry.
We won't do it. So there you go.
Oh, thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak on this subject today before us. I rise today in recognition of the the fine work that done by Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II. Never complained to anybody in 70 years about what she had to do. She just got on with the job. In the last century, I was fortunate to go to two garden parties. The first one to accompany Councillor Nellie Smedley. Some of you will probably remember her at that time. And what a day it was. It was so hot that poor Nellie actually fainted as she was going towards the Queen. And we spent about a couple of hours in the Red Cross area to get her feeling well again. Can I also say that I also, as chairman of Ashfield District Council, also attended the event and was fortunate enough to get in front of the Queen, but unfortunately at the last moment someone else got in instead of me. But I did hear her verbally say how she enjoyed meeting the people, and to say the heat, I don't know how she managed to continue for nearly over an hour with the terrible heat that there was on that day. And I also remember going to seeing the sandwiches, the very minute sandwiches, if everybody used to remember, and also the cups of tea, which were very difficult to hold because they were so small. But it was two events that I will remember in my heart for the rest of my days. As I say, unfortunately didn't meet the Queen, but I was only a few feet away and heard Her Majesty talking to many of the residents, and she sounded extremely friendly, which was a great thing for everybody to hear. As I say, she's been a wonderful ambassador for this country for over 70 years, and may she rest in peace, and God save the King. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Councillor Deakin.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's only a quick one. It's all to do with my daughter, who was a grand total of 6 at the time. She was off to London for her very first visit with her grandma and granddad, and very excited, and then suddenly remembered that's where the Queen lived. And as it was a weekend, she couldn't possibly be busy because it's a weekend, it's a Saturday. She's not at school, so the Queen must be free. So she wrote this lovely letter to the Queen about, can we just meet up just half an hour, just let's have a cup of tea together, because it's the weekend, we can all do it together. And she got this beautiful letter back, that was signed, that was the Queen's stamp on, that was very apologetic, that unfortunately that weekend was the weekend she wasn't there. She had to go and do other things, but it stayed with my daughter for a very long time. It's something that's in a frame that she's kept all these years, because it was that personal touch that, imagine how many thousands of those letters that are sent by the children, by people just wanting that connection, but to get that letter back, to have that personal touch, was something that's been really treasured. And Holly said something to me. She's 17 now, and she said, after the Queen's passing, she says, that's a lady that you've always looked up to, that I've looked up to as I'm growing up, who's shown how it's done, with dignity and pride, and who can lead magnificently. And somebody who you still feel like, you know, it's like her great-grandma, it's like that person that she can just talk to. And I think that will stay with me, that even the generations younger than me will all still remember saying, no, that's how it's done. So may she rest in peace, and God save the King.
Thank you, Councillor Deakin. No one else, I think, has indicated. Sorry. Councillor Callaghan.
I would just like to say it's the first time I've had my medal on, which I got presented with in 2015. And I was fortunate to be invited to the Queen's garden party at Buckingham Palace in 2016, where I actually did meet the Queen. And my first sight of this little lady, and she was a very little lady, and it was like a gazelle sprinting across the lawn. I couldn't believe that this little thing was... She seemed as if she was running across to meet everybody. And actually, she did have a beautiful smile. And I won't share what she said to me either, but it was very, very personal. And actually, she does know about the constituents and why they are there. And I was like really awestruck. And I've got to say, it was one of the best memories that I'll have for the rest of my life. And I think, you know, for that lady to devote her entire life to this country is absolutely magnificent. And I don't ever think that anybody will be able to replicate what she did. She certainly did what she said she was going to do. So God rest her soul.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other members. Thank you for those words. No, thank you, members, for those most moving words. I personally was privileged of seeing the Queen at a garden party many, many years ago. And like you say, she was very open to talk to as many people as she possibly could. And that was in the days when security wasn't quite as strong as it is today. And I'm sure all members here have got fond memories of her, although we didn't meet her or see her, but she's been a constant in our life for many, many years. So I'm sure we've all got memories of Christmas Day speeches and things like that in the past. So on behalf of this chamber, I would like to offer our sincere condolences to the royal family at this most difficult time, and support to His Majesty King Charles III as the crown passes to our new monarch. God save the King.
God save the King.
Thank you, members. We're also saddened to hear the news of the unexpected death of County Councillor Eddie Cubley. Councillor Cubley was elected to represent the Eastwood Division on the 6th of May in 2021 and was appointed to the Health Scrutiny Committee and the Economic Development and Asset Management Committee, and was also a member of the Fire Authority. Following the changes to our governance arrangements in May this year, Councillor Cubley was appointed to the Children's and Young People Select Committee, Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee, and continued his appointment on the Health Scrutiny Committee. He made a positive contribution to the committees and here at full council. His passing is a sad loss to this chamber. I now invite members who might wish to say a few words regarding Eddie Cubley, Councillor Cubley. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Chairman. Deeply saddened to have to speak and pay further tributes to our friend and former colleague, Eddie Cubley. There's only so much sadness one wants to deal with any given morning. His death, I think, was a shock to all of us, as it was so sudden and so unexpected from our point of view. Perhaps underlines how you never quite know how much time you've got in this world, in a stark contrast to the longevity that we've talked about in terms of Her Majesty. I'm certain that the unexpected nature of Eddie's passing can only be incredibly tough for his family to deal with in dealing with that loss, and I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say that our thoughts are with them at this incredibly difficult time. I won't stand and pretend that I knew Eddie intimately, Mr. Chairman, because I didn't. He was new to us here at the council. He seemed to me to be a quietly thoughtful character in my experience, but he was thoughtful, and in each conversation I had with him, he showed that he cared for his community. When he spoke, it was usually because he wanted to make the case for something for his area, or to understand some action or policy, and he was, in my experience, a kind and fair-minded person. I'm very sad that his contribution here has been cut short in the way that it has, because it felt very much like he was only just really getting to grips with things, getting his feet under the table here and feeling settled, and I think he had an awful lot more to give. So on behalf of colleagues, Mr. Chairman, I offer my condolences to Eddie's friends and family outside of the council, to those who might be listening, and say that we're very sorry for their loss.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Ogle.
Chairman. Eddie Cubley had made 192 parachute jumps. He was a black belt in Taekwondo. He had a successful electrical business. I attended Eddie Cubley's funeral as yours and the council representative, and as a fellow councillor with other councillors present. I was well received by Eddie's family and friends, and I express condolences. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ogle. Councillor Zadorny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd just like to add my support to the comments made and offer our condolences to Councillor Cubley's family and to the Conservative group who's lost one of their own. Of course, Eddie wasn't here very long, so not many of us had a chance to get to know him, but he and I were on the Community Safety Committee at the Fire Authority for the past 18 months or so. And as Councillor... I thought something was attacking me then. As Councillor Bradley said, he was a quiet and very thoughtful councillor. Very rarely spoke in the committees, actually. But then, as soon as they'd finish, I was stuck with him in the car park for 45 minutes after every meeting, where he wanted to go through the detail, particularly about Eastwood, how it affected Hena and Ripley, and how we were borrowing fire appliances from them, things that we took back a number of times about the on-call stuff. But he was actually pretty forensic and detailed about the stuff. He just didn't want to grandstand in any of the meetings about it. And I appreciated that, and we formed quite a friendship out of that funny little committee, actually, that met just every 8 weeks or so. And I often then sort of had scheduled in an extra hour after every meeting, because we always parked away from where we were supposed to park and walked to and had a chat in after all of those meetings. And it was interesting to me the level of detail he always took about Eastwood and their retained firefighters. It was that sort of stuff that really interested him. I didn't know some of the antics he'd got up to with jumping out of planes, but I must say he was quite a diligent councillor for Eastwood. And unlike a lot of us, he didn't grandstand, he just quietly got on with the job, and I'm sure he'll be very missed by his constituents. So our thoughts to the Conservative group and, of course, to his friends and family. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zadorny. Councillor Kate Pole, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I didn't get to know Councillor Cubley well either. Clearly he wasn't here all that long, was he? But I was so sorry to hear of his sudden passing. I'm sure he'll be very much missed by his family and his friends, and those in the community he represented. I mean, clearly he was a very hard-working and dedicated Eastwood councillor, from what I've heard. So our sincere condolences to his family and friends and to the Conservative group on behalf of the Labour group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fole. Councillor Richard Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. We do this far too often at the beginning of council meetings, unfortunately. I count myself as being lucky that along with Councillor Owen, Councillor Kerry, Councillor Doddy, I've known Eddie a lot longer and probably a lot better than colleagues here today. Eddie came onto my radar probably about 15 years ago, I would guess, when he started coming and joining us campaigning all over Broxtowe, and he was a stalwart. He was a very loyal and a hard-working person who came out and campaigned with us whenever we asked him to. Eventually, we had a colleague pass away on Broxtowe Borough Council, and Eddie was absolutely the natural choice of a candidate for us in that by-election, and he threw himself into the campaign, he threw himself into work on Broxtowe, just the same as he did when he was later elected here. The leader and one or two people have said he was quietly thoughtful, and he certainly was, and an intelligent guy as well. Somebody said at the funeral last week that he was an unassuming character, and I think that sums him up. I'd known him for about 5 years, and I could take you to this point because it was one of those moments. We're walking along the street somewhere in, I think it was in Philip Owen's patch, it was in Kimberley. And I said, "Are you out with us next Saturday?" "No, I'm jumping." I was jumping? I'm parachute jumping. So, "Oh, okay, you do much of that?" 192 jumps. He never told us. I don't know anybody, I don't know many parachute jumpers, I have to say, but I can't think of anybody that would parachute jump who wouldn't tell you that before they told you their name. Never mind what I found out years later about the black belt in Taekwondo. They'd tell you that. They'd probably show you that. Not Eddie. He just got on with it in his own quiet way, and that was Eddie. One of the things that sums up the high regard that Eddie was held in was it was a Friday morning of just 3 or 4 weeks ago when Eddie passed away, and I got the news quite early in the morning. I was inundated with calls from members from across the political spectrum who just wanted to express their sympathy and share the shock and the upset at Eddie's very untimely death. And I think just in closing, what I would reflect on what several people have said, that you didn't get the chance to know him. He joined us less than 18 months ago. We were working in COVID times. We didn't mix in the way that we perhaps do now and did previously. And you didn't get the chance to know him, and I'm sorry that you didn't, and I'm sorry that we don't have him to work with for the remainder of this term, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Payne.
I rise on behalf of the Nottinghamshire and City Nottingham Fire Authority to personally pay our respects to Councillor Cubley's family and colleagues across the other side of the chamber who have lost a treasured member of their group. I think Councillor Jackson is right. Eddie was quiet, gentle, assured, assertive, never rude, never belligerent. But believe me, sat in the chair of the Fire Authority, you always had to be on your game when he asked a question. It was always searching. It always cut to the point of the issue. It was always passionate on behalf of the residents that he represented in Eastwood. And in the time I spent outside of the formal setting of Fire Authority meetings with him, he was kind, courteous, engaging, a deeply lovely human being who could extend right across political divides. And I really, really enjoyed my conversations and time spent with him. And I think his quiet assuredness in this chamber will be greatly missed by this council and will certainly be greatly missed by the Fire Authority. And I don't just speak for members of the Fire Authority. The Chief Fire Officer and all members of the staff in the Fire Service were devastated when they heard of his untimely death, because he gave a real dedication to the Fire Authority, a real care for its members of staff, and a real passion for the constituents he served in Eastwood. So God bless him, God may he rest, and also respects to his family as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Before I ask the next speaker, I just remind you, the first time you speak, you've got to give a chance for the microphones to actually connect to the system. So everybody's on the first. Once you've spoken, they should work normally after that. So, Councillor Saddington.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I speak really as Chairman of the Health Scrutiny Committee and hopefully on behalf of all members of the committee. I have to say, I was very shocked when I heard of his sudden death. And I felt, certainly from my point of view, that there was a certain difficulty in getting to know Eddie, which I think has been mentioned. That was partly due to the fact of COVID and us working from other places virtually. And also, we just got over the COVID, and then it was the summer recess. And then, of course, the rest is history. So not only was I shocked at his death, I was also shocked that he was a parachute jumper, because in this council and at meetings, he was so quiet. He put the odd word of wisdom in, and I think that was because he sat there listening to the meeting. And I'm sure, as many members have found when they come to this chamber, it is extremely difficult sometimes to get up and say what you want to say for fear of feeling that you might sound a bit stupid. But in actual fact, he had real words of wisdom when he got up, and he did speak. And I think all the time he sat there trying to think it out. And prior to the last meeting in July, we had some time in the members' room. That was before it was burnt down, of course. And we sat there, he and I think there was probably Callum and somebody else with me. And we were really chatting to him, and I really felt I was getting to know him. And I thought, well, time will go on and we'll all get to know each other a lot better. But sadly, that wasn't to be. And I feel sorry that we didn't all get to know him much better than we perhaps could have done had we been in different circumstances of no COVID, etc., etc. But I do send my condolences to his family, because I'm sure he was they're extremely shocked. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sallington. Councillor Kerry.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just rise to remember Eddie. As Richard said and others have said, Eddie was Eddie. He was quiet, thoughtful. He worked assiduously with anything he did, anything he got his hands on. He wanted to know all the immense detail and everything before he would even think about letting you know what he thought. And I'm as proud to have him as a member of the Pension Fund Committee. And we did have a chat at one stage. He said, "This is really complicated, isn't it?" I said, "Well, it is, yeah, but, you know, you'll get training. You know, when it'll come round, you'll be fine, and you'll really..." And he said, "Yes, I really enjoy it." So really sad that he's not able to continue and fulfil some of the things he wanted to do on that committee and with this council. So condolences to Christine and his family. A sad loss. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerry. I don't think there's anybody else has indicated to speak. Okay. Right, members, it's my turn just to update you on matters of business I've undertaken since the last meeting. It has been a very busy time since the last meeting. I've actually had the privilege of attending many events, along with the Vice Chairman, who has ably filled in for me in some events I was unable to attend, and also when there's been a few clashes, because the diary is getting rather busy these days. You probably appreciate the last 2 weeks has been taken up with the death of Her Majesty the Queen, and also the proclamation of the new King Charles III, which we've been addressing here earlier today. I've also attended the Gedling and Ashfield Civic Services, and had the pleasure of going to representing us at the Indian Independence Day, Ukrainian Independence Day, and the Jamaican Independence Day, where I had the pleasure of meeting Councillor Henry's very attractive young granddaughter. It was a lovely, lovely evening, wasn't it? Oh, yeah. The 25th of August, as we all remember, was Nottinghamshire Day. I had the pleasure of raising the Nottinghamshire flag at Newark Castle, which is quite a appropriate place, Newark being very much a royalist town. We celebrated the Merchant Navy Day, raising the flag at Ashfield, Gedling, and also down here at council buildings. And also recently, we had the privilege of the Tour of Britain coming to Nottingham and starting off in Rushcliffe and finishing in Mansfield. I know there was a slight debate going on because we were worried about the Queen's health at that time, whether the race would finish, but it did. But it was a very great day. It was nice to see so many people on the sides of the roads in Nottinghamshire watching the cyclists go through, and it really put Nottinghamshire on the map. That's basically my events, members. I don't know whether you've noticed, I am running a raffle again on behalf of my good cause, the Ukrainian Cultural Centre. Quite appropriate, I think, at the moment with the way things are happening. And because of your generosity last time, I've actually brought some more prizes along, so there's 3 or 4 more prizes. And also Councillor Elliott has kindly donated a print of the Nottingham Forest with a badge from the Remembrance Day badge for Nottingham Forest. So any budding Nottingham Forest supporters, I know this chamber's full of Nottingham Forest supporters, may like to buy double amount of tickets so they've got a chance of winning that print. So it's all going to a very good cause of my charity members. So please, your donations or money, well, yes, it's greatly appreciated because it all goes to a very good cause. And also, while I'm on my feet, I ought to probably just mention that Peter Barker is now due to leave us after 30 years of service in the Democratic Service. I think Peter has been one of those constant supporters to all members of his chamber over the years we've been as council members. So I think I'd like to just wish him well in his retirement and thank him for his service to this council. Oh, lunch. Lunch will be 12:30 or thereabouts, depending on where we are with the business of today. We now move on to constituency issues. Okay, right, okay, yeah. This item gives members who have previously given notice by the deadline the opportunity to speak up to 3 minutes on any particular matter relevant to their constituencies or any particular issue arising in their electoral division, which is relevant to the services provided by the County Council. This is an opportunity simply to air these issues in the Council meeting. It will not give rise to a debate on the issue or a question and answer session. Members are reminded that there is a maximum time limit of 15 minutes for this item on the agenda, and each member may only speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. I call upon Councillor John Wilmot on the environmental responsibilities of Nottinghamshire County Council in Hucknall North.
Thank you, Chairman. As you all know, Hucknall is my life and my soul. When I see things that I feel are not being attended to, everyone knows I fight tooth and nail to get things sorted. So I want this council, in lots of ways, to get back to basics. A few days ago, representatives of the Forestry Commission held a meeting with the residents of Hucknall at the Ranges, an open space in Hucknall, to select areas where extra trees could be planted. But many of the people there commented on the lack of basic maintenance for the area. Poor weed-covered pathways, fencing being pushed over by overgrown vegetation, a brook that has disappeared because of overgrown vegetation. And of course, residents want more trees, but they want the County Council to get the basics right. I do not feel I'm asking too much when I say, can we have the Baker Lane Brook wall repaired in the town centre and the loose brickwork removed from the brook? It's playing havoc with the wildlife. I move on to the Titchfield Street open space, which I've brought up on a number of occasions. It needs cleaning up. Here we are trying to keep Hucknall clean and tidy, and we have an area staring us in the face like it is. Finally, Chairman, people are saying speeding cars and inconsiderate parking is a serious issue in every town, including Hucknall. Is it not time that councils and the police started working together to control this problem? More responsibility by everyone must be taken on this issue. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Councillor David Martin on bus services in Selsdon Parish.
Chairman. I'd like to address the problems with bus services in Selsdon Parish. Over the past few weeks, we have seen various stories about the impact of the bus driver shortage. Vital bus services cancelled at the last minute with a tweet for notice. When a bus service is cancelled in places like Nottingham City, West Bridgeford, Sutton or Mansfield, it's an inconvenience, maybe half an hour delay at the most. In places like Selsdon Parish, it could be the difference between getting to work, college or missing a vital hospital appointment. I was recently contacted by a resident on a mobility scooter who was stuck at Alperton Road, Jubilee, as a bus had not turned up. Trent Barton had let her down again, and my team contacted Trent Barton, who stated that the cancellation of the service was down to a national problem they had announced on Twitter. There are no bus stop real-time displays to let residents know. In June, I wrote to the County Council pointing out the fact that bus stops in Selsdon had not got these displays, and I received the following reply. I could totally understand why it looks like Selsdon Division has been missed for real-time displays, but we could absolutely wish to invest in this area if we could secure funding through an external funding stream, and we will continue to push for this at every opportunity. The funding stream they had hoped for was via Bus Back Better, a bid put forward to the government from this council with Nottingham City. We bid for 98 million but only got a third of that. Can I make a plea today, Mr Chairman, that any review of bus services take into consideration the rural parts of our county? Failure to do so will lead to rural communities across places like Jacksdale, Selsdon, Underwood and Westwood becoming even more isolated than they already are. And hopefully we'll get an announcement other than on Twitter. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. There are no the footpath from East Markham to Tuxford.
Thank you, Chairman. The footpath needs improving. The footpath between East Markham and Tuxford has deteriorated badly. It is impossible for two people to walk side by side, and certainly not a parent and child. Pushing a pushchair is very difficult. The path is impassable safely with a wheelchair or other mobility unit. The path needs widening. People walk from East Markham to Tuxford for shopping. The improvement of this route would allow this path to be better used as a circular route for health and well-being of the community, using the circular route, the Great North Road, a mile west. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Owen, on request for a one-way street and residents parking scheme on Victoria Street in Kimberley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. You said this is a petition I'm presenting on behalf of residents of Victoria Street in Kimberley. Victoria Street is a street that runs parallel and is adjacent to the main shopping street in Kimberley. It consists almost entirely of terraced houses, and virtually none of them have any off-street parking. The road is itself narrow, such that there has to be no parking down one side in order to provide a single carriageway for vehicles to travel. What residents are asking for is a residents' parking scheme to protect the limited car parking, on-street car parking, and to protect it from people that are visiting the shopping centres in Kimberley, because Motorists don't particularly want to pay car parking charges where they are imposed in that area. And they also want it to be made one way so that it's much safer and easier for vehicles to travel along. It seems to me to be eminently sensible, and I'm sure the Cabinet member will have no hesitation in agreeing with me.
Councillor Dr John Doddy regarding the withdrawal of the number 21 bus service.
Bus route 21 is signed by no less than 1,366 people in Stapleford and Trowell, and it has a uniqueness in that it takes people from Trowell Park Estate and people from North Stapleford directly to my surgery. It's an exceptionally important bus route. This is. We talked a lot about 96-year-olds today, and for the elderly, a bus is nothing less than a vaccine against loneliness, isolation and depression, and therefore the preservation of a sustainable transport system in any community is the essence to improving health inequalities and allowing people to access the very facilities that we want them to go and get. Let's save bus route 21.
I'm just surprised that the doctor wants his patients to get in.
Thank you, members. I've got the unusual opportunity now to present a petition to myself. This comes from the residents of a village I represent, Hoveringham Village, who over the last couple of years, over the hot summers, has been inundated by illegal raves and parties on the old gravel pits, which are now lakes, and seem to be a very, very popular place for people to visit. But problems were highlighted this year when there was a fire down there, and because the amount of cars parked blocking the roads and access into the village, a fire engine couldn't get through. And to be fair, our county council has acted, and we did put some cones out and try and control the amount of people visiting the village. And it did sort of curtail it for a short period of time. But what we would like is some permanent measures to stop the illegal parking. I know that it's up to the landowners to try and stop the trespass onto the lakes. But also during this time, Hoveringham is hit by boy racers, and over the last 6 months there has been 2 quite big accidents within the village, and one actually demolished a park bench or a bench in the village where not 10 minutes before people were actually sitting on. So we would like also to look, the Hoveringham people would like to also look at some traffic calming measures if possible. The villages round which I represent in that area, there seems to be a circuit for boy racers to time themselves going around sharp bends and through the middle of villages, and so we're asking for some means of trying to traffic calming measures. So I present this to myself and to Adrian. Thank you very much. Sorry. Response to petitions presented to the Chairman of the County Council. I move that the contents of the report and the actions approved be noted and agreed. All in favour? Thank you. Agenda item 8, recognition of members and officers of groups. I would like to call upon Councillor Chris Barnfather, who will move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Chairman. The Local Government Committees and Political Groups regulations made under the Local Government and Housing Act of 1989 require that the composition of political groups of this council are notified, as they were in fact in May of this year. It also requires any changes to that composition to be notified. There is now a change in that Councillor Nigel Turner has now returned to the fold and is now a member of the Conservative group. The numbers are shown at the bottom of page 45 of the bundle, as are indeed the percentages of the composition of the council represented by those different political groupings and of course the independent member. And the recommendations, as on page 46, is that the membership of the political groups be recognised and that the officers of the groups, as indeed presented in May of this year, remains unchanged and again should be noted, and I move that recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barnfather. Councillor Lawton, you second the motion?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Formally second the motion.
Do any members wish to speak? If not, we will go straight to the vote. All those in favour? I think, again, that is unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 9, members of committees. Again, I call upon Councillor Chris Barnfather, who will move the recommendations in this report.
Thank you, Chairman. Obviously, the change to the composition of a political group requires a change to committee membership to maintain proportionality. And the paper at page 51 of the bundle, with the recommendation on page 52 that the Council confirm the revised allocation of committee seats as set out in Appendix A. There's just one minor alteration, Chairman. In the independent councillor, Councillor Steve Garner, has 2 committee seats, and Councillor Sam Smith, with his Maths GCSE, would of course realise that the figures didn't quite add up at the bottom of the page. They now do, with that number 1 under Councillor Garner being changed to 2. So I move the recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barnfather. Councillor Lawton, would you like to second the motion?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If formally second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. Any members wish to speak? If not, we move straight to the vote. All those in favour? Again, that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Agenda item 10, Executive Report. Key issues and activities. As set out in the Constitution, the Leader has provided the Executive Report. The Leader will move the receipt of the report for noting and make a short statement introducing it. The report will be seconded by the Deputy Leader, who will do so without speaking to it. No other members may speak on this item and no amendment can be tabled. Once the report has been moved and seconded and the Leader has spoken, I will move to the vote on the motion that report is to be noted. Councillor Bradley, move the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I really want to use this report today to say thank you to a lot of people. Members will be able to see the content of the written report for themselves, and I'll speak to some of those things. But our staff at Nottinghamshire County Council have really gone above and beyond over the summer, with all sorts of things happening outside of our control in many cases that they've had to respond to. And they've done so absolutely brilliantly. So I just wanted to raise this for the public and to recognise just how fantastic some of our staff here have been this summer. On behalf, I hope, of group leaders and all members, say a big thank you to them. Of course, in recent months, we've had the significant accident on Lady Bay Bridge, which saw the bridge closed for several weeks. Councillor Clark will respond to a question about it in the next agenda item in more detail, so I won't steal his thunder. But in turning that project around, responding magnificently and getting that work done, staff at the council and at VIA got the bridge back open weeks ahead of schedule reducing the impacts on residents and on our economy, and everything else significantly in the process. It's really excellent work worthy of recognition for the staff and the leadership involved, so a huge thank you from me. Similarly, as the report lays out, it won't have escaped your notice, Mr Chairman, that this building caught fire. Sadly, the age and nature of the building is challenging, and an electrical fault caused a fire on our corridor that caused us to evacuate the building and have to base ourselves elsewhere for a time. And firstly, procedures were followed. Staff in the building who managed that process were excellent. To the fire service and other emergency response, that was excellent. And following that, within hours, there were 70 staff from ARC starting to work through plans to get the building open. Shows perhaps the benefit of having your own arm's length company who do that kind of work, but the procurement process alone would have taken weeks to get things done if that weren't the case. But again, staff within the council have been excellent, ARC have been excellent, and we've managed to get the building reoccupied much quicker than we originally imagined, with this chamber, of course, open well in advance of this meeting. And only us left now in the Conservative group, still a little bit homeless, but we are working on that. I'm in no rush to prioritise our corridor. We'll work through what that looks like, but it'll be several months, I think, before we get back in there, if at all. But again, huge thank you to the work of staff. Everywhere else is good to go. Insurance looks set to cover the cost, and so thankfully no major harm done. Some more thank yous, I'm afraid, Mr Chairman, but you see in the report, we've obviously had a number of sporting and cultural events too, including Nottinghamshire Day, both civic event on the day and then the first Nottinghamshire Day Festival in Sherwood Forest. I was pleased that so many people came along to get involved in that, and the day itself achieved a lot of coverage and focus to promote all of the positives and great things about our county. We've also had the Tour of Britain. We were fortunate enough to be able to get to the end of the tour. It turned out to be the end of the tour as a whole at the finish line in Mansfield, and we saw again thousands of people turn out, decorate their villages along the route, showing that support. Again, a huge amount of time and effort goes into all of these things to deliver them successfully, and I'm very grateful for the work of staff and partners in putting those together. The Tour of Britain in particular commented, and always comment when they come to Nottinghamshire, how fantastic our team here are to work with, and that is always brilliant to hear. Finally, Mr Chairman, we spent a long time this morning sharing our thoughts and emotions about the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. Don't intend to go through that again, but what might go unnoticed by the public, but it's very obvious behind the scenes, is that Her Majesty's passing sparks a huge range of actions, including planning and events and following the protocols known as Operation London Bridge in double quick time. And I think the events, the opportunities for people to pay their respects, the memorial service and other elements of that programme have been delivered incredibly well in our county with the right level of respect and public engagement again. And that is testament to teams of people here in the Lord Lieutenant's office and elsewhere. That was all handled very quickly and effectively with a lot of overtime put in to make sure that that was delivered properly. So a huge thank you to those colleagues too for their service in getting that historic occasion and those events right for our county and for the public. Spoken already about our new Chief Executive, so I won't repeat it, but suffice it to say I'm excited about some of the opportunities we have to tackle some of those significant challenges that we've already begun to discuss and get into, so all of our senior leadership team is looking forward to that. And finally, Mr Chairman, it would be of no surprise to you to tell you that I want to just speak a little bit just about the devolution part of the report. Members will have seen, no doubt, and perhaps the biggest event from our perspective as a county and as a region over the summer was that we secured an historic devolution deal for Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. We were asked to accelerate that time frame. That's an offer we accepted because the certainty it now provides in having agreed a financial settlement across a number of policy areas is really important in the context of everyone having squeezed budgets and all sorts of uncertainty in the future. There's still some work to do, but we have those numbers, £1.2 billion of confirmed investment, some ongoing consistent gain share funding and some in-year capital funds that we're planning now and will deliver quickly. That's really good news. And that £1.14 billion investment pot, which we can invest, borrow against, stretch in a variety of ways, I think is the single biggest investment pot of its size that government has ever handed down to any region. So I'm pretty pleased with that, I think, and we can be proud of that success. We'll spend the next few months putting that governance together with partners. We'll consult the public over the winter about their priorities within this deal. And as I've said before, this means more local funds, more able to control and deliver those things better, attracting investment to create well-paid jobs within our area. It means more funds and control to provide a joined-up transport network to tackle perhaps some of the challenges that members have raised in this room around our public transport already today, and also on skills and training in particular, big opportunities to make sure that our residents have the chance to get the right qualifications in the right sectors so that they can access those jobs and opportunities. That's a long-term plan, a shift in the way that our local economy works, but I believe, Mr Chairman, that it will be life-changing for many of our residents and for their kids and grandkids over a long period of time, who will have better opportunities to succeed and live happy, healthy lives in our county. So I'm immensely proud of achieving that this summer, having been round and round this loop several times in the last decade and never quite managed to get the thing over the line. We've finally done it, and I firmly believe, Mr Chairman, that as I said 18 months ago when I first became the leader, the ability to join up national and local decision making so we're all on the same page has made a difference in this process and helped to finally get it over the line. But the final thank you is I'm also hugely grateful to officers across all of the 4 councils and districts and boroughs who over this summer were tasked with putting a 3 or 4 month piece of work together in about 3 or 4 weeks and did so excellently, delivered everything they were asked and again managed to get a huge and historic deal for our region over the line. So I think that's it for me, Mr Chairman, this week, but a busy summer and much more to dig into over the course of the autumn and winter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Lawton, would you like to second the motion?
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. I formally second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lawton. This motion, there's no speakers to it, so I'll now put it to the vote. All those in favour? On what? Councillor Ford.
Okay, I just wanted to, by way of explanation, we don't intend to vote on this. We can't speak on it. We can't add to it. So therefore, we don't see any point voting on it. And I just wanted to explain that, just out of courtesy, really, why we're not voting on it. And just one suggestion, one constructive suggestion on this, because this for us, we're not able to make our voice heard, which I think is something that really we should be really be doing. So can I make a suggestion for a change in the Constitution, just to say, could you please just give 5 minutes for each of the opposition leaders just to comment on your report? On this executive report. I'll just put that up for consideration, but we won't be voting on this.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Ford. That will be probably picked up in the Constitution review, which is ongoing, I believe. But I believe this report is out in time for members to put questions to the Council if they wish to on what's in the report, if they wanted to.
You can just go at the bottom.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's move on, Roger.
I put it to the vote. All those in favour of the report? Okay. All those. Sorry.
Your hands up. Keep your hands up, because she's counting.
Can you keep? 33.
Okay. All those against?
Thank you.
All those against? Abstentions? No voting. No abstention?
Yeah,
So there's one.
Francis. Yes, he's abstaining. So one abstention.
One abstention.
One abstention.
And then there's
33 for,
Th-
one abstention. Okay.
33 for and 1 abstention. So it's carried.
Okay. After reading it, it's not one I've read.
Agenda item 11A, questions to Nottinghamshire City and Nottingham's Fire Authority. None have been received. 11B, questions to the Leader, Cabinet Members and Committee Chairmen. As set out in the Constitution, a maximum of 60 minutes is allowed for questions to the Leader, Cabinet Members and Committee Chairmen, after which any remaining questions will receive a written response. There will be a maximum of 1 supplementary question, which must be from the member who asked the original question. The supplementary question should be on the same matter and should not be in the form of a question, and should be in the form of a question and not a statement. There are 20 questions, and the first question is from Councillor Jonathan Wheeler concerning updates on works following the fire at County Hall. Councillor Bradley to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on Thursday, 28th of July, members and staff were evacuated from County Hall building following a fire on the first floor members' corridor. Could the leader please give an update on the works that have been carried out, any costs that the authority may have incurred, and if the disruption caused by the fire has had any impact on the delivery of our services?
Councillor Bradley to reply, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Wheeler, for the question. Pleasure to be able to respond to questions which are, of course, submitted 5 days after the papers are published, after my leader's report is published, and then members have the opportunity for 5 days to submit questions about things, including the content of that report, as Jonathan Wheeler has done. I've been through some of this in my report, as I've said. I won't go through all of that again, but just to reiterate that huge thank you to fire marshals, emergency planning team, emergency services who all did a truly sterling job, safely escorting staff out and away from the building, arranging taxis and shuttles for many people who left their belongings in County Hall, communicating and then coordinating the safe collection of those belongings, which was a task, and relocating staff members into temporary accommodation. In terms of the works to the building following the fire, Properties emergency planning teams in partnership with ARC implemented a programme of works to decontaminate, to reinstate parts of the building as soon as possible. That consisted of 4 phases. Phases 1, 2 and 3 were primarily on decontamination works to allow safe reinstatement of offices. Although the fire itself was contained to members' corridors, smoke went through voids and around various parts of the building. The basement area and print facility of County Hall was the first to be handed over and reoccupied on the 16th of August, just 2 weeks after the fire, which I think is a really impressive piece of work. 1 week later, the rest of phase 1 was handed over on the 25th. All floors of the south wing of the building overlooking the car park, including the chamber and assembly rooms. Phase 2 on the 2nd of September included the ground floor entrance and reception, and members will note that we're now able to fully access the building in that way. And phase 3 on the 16th of September, all the remaining areas of County Hall with the exception of the members' corridor. For those 3 phases, an average of 70 people have been on site 7 days a week, including bank holidays, to ensure that we've been able to get back in this building as quickly as possible. That's 30,000 staff hours have gone into doing that. So again, a huge thank you. The full reoccupation, excluding the members' first floor, was originally programmed to be completed in 12 weeks and in fact has been done in under 8. Down to the hard work of a huge number of people, Matt Neal, Neil Gamble, Chris Molyneux, Steve and Jeff Crowder, John Nyland and his health and safety team, Suzanne Smith, Paul Martin and his IT team, team from ARC, Dale Reeve, Dave Smith, Richard Mills, Mark Murphy, and many of our own officers, not least our former Chief Executive, Marge, Lucy Peel, Derek Higton, who assisted our staff with the recovery of belongings and getting things in place to make all of that happen. And our new Chief Executive, who kept a steady hand on the tiller throughout. In terms of service delivery, the evacuation caused minimal disruption after that initial 24 hours. And staff, decision-making officers were able to relocate into surrounding vacant buildings like Trent Bridge House. Whilst that's a positive that we were able to tackle that, it does show how important the piece of work that Councillor Girling and Scrutiny Committee are currently undertaking around the Council's property portfolio is to ensure that we're using our assets in the best possible way. And we're still processing and assessing the full costs incurred to date, but I can advise that the Council is fully insured. The vast majority of costs, therefore, will be incurred, that we've incurred will be recoverable through our insurance, not by the taxpayer. The only cost to the Council is in respect of that officer time, as I have described. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor? No. Question 2 comes from Councillor Jim Creamer concerning community wealth building. And Councillor Richard Jackson to reply.
Thank you, Chairman, and welcome to a new Chief Exec, I think we all know already. Question for the Cabinet Member of Finance. How will community wealth building be considered as part of this Council's plan for delivering a sustainable procurement policy?
Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and I thank Councillor Kramer for his question.
The Centre for Local Economic Strategies defines community wealth building as a, I'll quote, new people-centred approach to local economic development which redirects wealth back into the local economy and places control and benefits into the hands of local people. The CLES indicates that community wealth building is based on 5 key principles: plural ownership of the economy, making financial power work for local places, fair employment and just labour markets, progressive procurement of goods and services, and socially productive use of land and property. If you look on Wikipedia, Chairman, which is most people's go-to, it derives from a model called the Cleveland model, which was, no surprises, developed in Cleveland in the US, and that's now developed and turned into the Preston model from Preston in Lancashire. It's a form of municipal socialism which utilises anchor institutions, living wage expansion, community banking, public pension investment, worker ownership and municipal enterprise tied to a procurement strategy at a municipal level. Don't ask me what all that means. So, Chairman, I think it's fair to say that we can see where Councillor Creamer's question is coming from, and Jim's never made any secret of his socialist instincts. I'm guessing at this point, Chairman, that having been knee-deep in words like progressive and municipal socialism, Councillor Creamer and others would not necessarily be anticipating me to be overly positive in responding to this question. However, we do seek to be constructive, and I'm happy to comment on aspects of the progressive procurement of goods and services where the sustainable procurement policy that we are establishing does offer some common ground. When it comes to how money is spent and services are commissioned locally, some feel that the cost is often the dominant determining factor in who gets the contracts. I'm pleased to say that for many years we've always ensured that quality has played a more important part in determination than costs. It is important that environmental credentials and social value are higher on the list of considerations, and that brings me to a proposed policy that we wanted to discuss at the cancelled Cabinet meeting on the 15th of September. Council's commitment to social, economic and environmental well-being is reflected in the Nottinghamshire Plan. To help us achieve our aims, we're determined to gain additional community benefit from the £600 million worth of spending each year on buying goods and services. The new sustainable procurement policy, when it's presented to a future Cabinet meeting, will build on this Council's current procurement strategy and has been subject to wide consultation with stakeholders, including representatives from service directorates, councillors, voluntary community sector and the local chambers of commerce. It will reinforce best practice that we're already achieving, delivering significant local spend and working with our local partners to support young people into apprenticeships. We'll continue to work in partnership with our suppliers and the wider supply chain to consider whole life cycle environmental, social and economic impact on our communities from the goods and services that we procure. So, Chairman, as is the case, I hope for all of us who serve the public, the positive outcomes that we're seeking to achieve for our residents and for our local economy are often not all that different, even if we have sometimes contrasting ideas about the way that we get there.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Creamer, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that extremely accurate, I would say, actually answer. You've anticipated actually some of my my supplementary question. So I'll simply ask that going forward, will you actually be making sure as a Cabinet member that we as a Cabinet are involved and that the whole community is involved in actually the into the wealth building area? It's not just Cleveland in America and Preston over here. And there's nothing wrong with a little bit of socialism anywhere. When it comes to community development and socialism, they quite often go for that. And we actually do want to make sure we do see community development and the procurement for local businesses, local people, and actually make sure it's environmentally friendly as well. So, as you've already said, it's in the plan. Will you commit to keeping it in the plan?
Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll park the discussion about the benefits of socialism, such as they are, because I'm hungry and it's lunch in 10 minutes. But I think the point is, Jim, we're already doing it, and we've been doing it for years. I think you sat on Finance Committee for most of the previous administration. and you'll have heard it was something we discussed at every opportunity, how we could get more of our spend into the local economy. So it's something we've actively been doing for a long time. The game has been upped, if you like, by our commitment to move into a carbon neutral status. And so that's a big part of decisions that we're taking on procurement. As I said, we're working very hard to make sure that those who supply us and work for us are taking on apprentices locally. And there's a very good record on that one. And you probably did read, although the cabinet meeting was cancelled, you will have had the papers, and I'm sure will have read the papers and seen what's in the new procurement strategy. And actually, I would hope you'll be able to support it when it comes in future.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. We'll move on to the third question from Councillor Tom Smith regarding the number 141 bus service. Councillor Neil Clark to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On behalf of Blidworth and Rainworth residents, can I ask the Cabinet Member for Transport and Environment to pass on to his officers our thanks for their successful efforts in saving the 141 bus service? Would he agree that the preservation of this service is welcome news for all current and potential users of the 141 bus service, myself included, demonstrating Nottinghamshire County Council's ongoing commitment to supporting local bus services despite significant financial pressures facing this and many other local authorities?
Councillor Clark to reply.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman, and I am indeed happy to pass on the thanks of Councillor Smith's division residents to our officers for their excellent work in securing the future of the 141 bus service. Stagecoach have taken over this bus route following an extensive procurement tendering exercise run by Nottinghamshire County Council to find a new operator. That search was begun by our officers in July, the moment that Trent Barton, at short notice, announced that it would be withdrawing its provision. The new Stagecoach 141 bus service commenced on Monday the 5th of September, following the same route from Sutton to Nottingham via Mansfield and Hucknall at the same times. The previous Trent Barton service ran until Saturday the 3rd of September, so there was a seamless transfer resulting in no loss of service for passengers. We made it clear to residents from the outset that we would work around the clock to secure a new company to run the bus, and we delivered on our word. We know how important this service is for local communities and businesses in North and Central Nottinghamshire, helping people to shop, work, and meet friends and loved ones. The agreement between Nottinghamshire County Council and Stagecoach will initially last for 12 months, with an option to extend for a further year after this period. I'm sure this news will be welcomed by current bus users along the entire 141 route, but I also hope it inspires many more people to use the service, which will help us to keep it running in years to come. I hope we can encourage people to get out of their cars and use the buses, Mr. Chairman. I heard quite a lot about a petition to save the 141 service, although the petition has never been presented to me or indeed to this council, so it remains something of a mystery to me. It didn't change the intentions of Trent Barton, and it pledged absolutely no part in the decision-making process. Maybe that petition got lost in a hot tub and is still drying out, Mr. Chairman. The 141 service was saved as a direct result of the work of this council's officers and the commitment of this administration. We initially instigated meetings with Trent Barton, which I chaired and where senior officers were present, but more significantly, we conducted the successful negotiations with Stagecoach, whereby they agreed to become the new operator of the service. Councillor Smith is correct about this council's ongoing commitment to supporting bus services throughout Nottinghamshire, despite the very significant financial pressures we face. There are over 200 bus routes in this county, and under normal circumstances before the pandemic, there were around 28 million passenger trips per year. Sadly, but inevitably, passenger numbers collapsed during the COVID lockdown and are taking time to fully recover, which does put more of these bus routes at risk. The County Council currently plays a vital role in keeping these routes running by providing financial support for services that cannot be sustained by private bus companies on commercial income alone. We support, as a County Council, 80 bus routes, spending £4.1 million a year to do so. But we are facing significant financial pressures of our own, and the money we spend ultimately comes from taxpayers. This administration remains absolutely committed to ensuring every community in Nottinghamshire is served by public transport, but we are pursuing new ways of achieving this. We are accessing new national funding streams and developing innovative approaches at a local level to protect and increase bus travel options. For example, further funding for buses will be provided from a new instalment of the government's Bus Recovery Grant, announced in August, of which we await further details. This grant is available to help routes struggling to recover to pre-COVID passenger levels, supplemented by existing council-held transport funding. Working in partnership with local bus operators and with the help of this government funding, we will provide financial support to 19 key bus services across Nottinghamshire that would otherwise be at risk. These are listed on the Council's website and include the 141 bus service. Nottinghamshire County Council has developed an ambitious bus service improvement plan to encourage bus use, and through this we hope to secure further central government funding to invest in bus services and infrastructure. One of the key objectives of the improvement plan is to deploy innovation and new technology in the provision of rural services. For example, earlier this year, Nottingham and Nottinghamshire was confirmed as one of the areas that would receive a share of a new £200 million central government funding pot for zero-emission buses. This money is purchasing a total of 943 buses across the country and is helping recipient councils to invest more in electric charging points or hydrogen refuelling infrastructure. Just 3 weeks ago, on the 30th of August, the County Council began trials of its own new Notts Bus on Demand bus service, giving residents a more flexible way of travelling by bus. Notts Bus on Demand is being piloted in the villages around Retford, Ollerton and Newark, and an evening service is also being launched in Mansfield. The new services replace the current 136, 190, 195, 200, 330, 332, 333, 334 and 335 bus routes. Got all those right, Mr. Chairman. As we seek to ensure people still have bus services when they need them, whilst ensuring value for money. Unlike traditional services, where buses follow a set route and can sometimes pick up very few passengers, Notts Bus on Demand doesn't have a fixed route or timetable. Instead, the buses can travel anywhere between bus stops and designated points within their operating zones. Passengers will be able to choose when they would like to travel by booking their journey through an easy-to-use app or over the telephone. In areas that are currently served by a 2-hourly bus service, such as Wellow, Egmonton and Cornton, residents will be able to enjoy more frequent bus travel. Although because our buses will not follow a fixed route, they will provide a new transport option in those areas that are not currently served by our bus network. As I've said, we're in the pilot stage, but we hope this new service will offer residents a reliable, affordable and greener way to travel. By giving passengers the choice over when they want to travel, we are able to offer them greater flexibility with their travel plans. So, Chairman, it's fair to say that this Council is at the forefront of efforts to protect and improve bus services and promote more bus usage, but we're looking to do this in a new, innovative and more efficient way. We must encourage and promote bus use as much as we possibly can, Chairman, and let's save the environment and get those people out of cars. Hitherto, when bus routes and services have become commercially unviable, we have worked reactively, seeking in effect to prop up those services using public money. Now we intend to be more proactive, offering a different type of provision better matched to the individual needs of potential passengers, especially in outlying rural areas. This will provide improved public transport options for the public and better value to them as taxpayers. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Clark. Councillor Clark, sorry for that in-depth reply. Councillor Smith, you got a supplementary.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Clark, for that very healthy response. No supplementary. I'd just like to put on record my thanks again to your team.
Thank you. Yeah, I think now we've reached the yard arm for lunch. We will start with question 5, because unfortunately Councillor Helen Ann Smith is not here, so she will be getting a written answer to her question. And just to remind members, please please be generous with the raffle prizes, please, because those are going to a very good cause. People out selling them at lunchtime. We're back here at 1:30.